So on top of everything else, this is the 50th anniversary.
It is.
And there is a wonderful book that's coming out that brings back some old modules that I still own and that I grew up with. What is this book, first of all?
This book is called Quests from the Infinite Staircase. It unites each of these classic tales using the framework of the Infinite Staircase, which is aptly named, is a staircase that is endless and infinite in a demi-plane of its own.
So what are the modules? What are the adventures that you are bringing back?
Yeah, so there are 6 adventures in this. It starts off with The Lost City, then comes When a Star Falls. There are 2 adventures from the UK TSR team here. Some of our long-standing fans might remember them, and to others, they might be pleasant new surprises. The other is Beyond the Crystal Cave. There's also The Lost Caverns of Saj Khan, which you will see a preview of in March if you're attending GaryCon, PAX East, or just are downloading it or at your friendly local game store. There is also I3 Pharaoh, and topping it all off is Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, perhaps my favorite of all those listed.
One of the weirdest adventures ever made.
Yes, one of the weirdest adventures. I mean, who doesn't love giving your players laser guns?
I love it.
Yes, all of these adventures come from the first edition of the game. It's a great way to celebrate the 50th anniversary, and all of these, like any of the content that you'll find in this book, is compatible with the revised core rulebooks coming later on. So the Lost City is the first adventure in this book. What makes the Lost City really exciting is that the characters are going to interact with these denizens of this bygone civilization that was once thought lost. It begins with them finding the Lost City.
Always a good start.
Much to the bane of alphabetization, there are 2 adventures that begin with The Lost. I hate that, but I didn't name them. So The Lost City is the first adventure, and it sees the characters go to this lost civilization of Synodecia. It resides in this desert, and the characters go into this enormous ziggurat that has these 3 mysterious statues atop it.
When the party stumbles upon this sort of half-buried ziggurat and find a way inside, they quickly discover that there's kind of the remnants of a fallen society still lingering in its depths, and greater mysteries even deeper below. And of course, because it's a D&D adventure, you suddenly realize that there is an evil that has long lingered, that was sort of responsible for the society's fall, and you can unearth that evil and possibly even confront it. And so, super fun, classic, straight down the fairway dungeon adventure.
So When a Star Falls starts at 4th level. It's the second adventure in the book, and it finds the characters trying to recover, you guessed it, a star that has fallen. So very, very appropriately named as well, this adventure. So the interesting thing about this fallen star, it is an event foretold in a book of prophecy. So standing resolute in the center of a vast, fast-flowing river is a place known as the Tower of the Heavens. It has stood there for centuries, and in this tower, there are said to be these sages of astrology that they look up at the heavens and they divine the future through watching and reading the stars. So the characters might have a question of their own that they want answered, because anyone can come to the Tower of the Heavens armed with that question and perhaps a mandatory donation of gold for the sages, and they can ask that question and get an answer. So the characters are going to go to this place. The problem, though, is that the power of prophecy is in danger of falling into those who would use it for evil.
Then we've got a wacky adventure that was the first to come out of the UK office of TSR.
Right.
Module UK1, which was Beyond the Crystal Cave. One of my favorites and an inspiration for The Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
Oh, wow.
Because
This is before Feywild was a thing.
Exactly, yes. Before the Feywild was a thing, this adventure came out, and you're searching for a pair of lost lovers who disappeared, and you go into this cave complex and discover a means to get to this magical garden, which is kind of like this time-frozen, fabulous, eternal place.
One thing that makes this really unique, especially for its time, is that in the original adventure, you could go through the whole thing without combat. Fans who have played through Wild Beyond the Witchlight might remember this idea of a no combat option in the Feywild. Well, that was actually happening almost 50 years ago. It's kind of wild to think about that. You know, these very early adventure designers in a time of hack and slash dungeons, kill it, loot it, eat it, level up, right? That they're saying, how about a little Shakespeare in our D&D, right? We've done the chocolate and the peanut butter. What about hazelnuts, right?
The fourth adventure is another one of my favorites by Tracy and Laura Hickman. It is called Pharaoh, Module I3. It was the first adventure that gave you a pyramid as a dungeon location to explore. And the hook is brilliant. It's this, crossing the desert, the characters encounter the ghost of this dead pharaoh who begs them to enter his tomb and basically rob it because he's trapped in this spectral existence until a curse is broken, and the only way to break that curse is to basically violate his tomb.
So the characters are asked, they are beseeched by the ghost of Amun-Sa to delve his pyramid, which he has made the most theft-proof, dungeon-delving-proof, adventurer-proof place. But they must then delve it and recover his two royal implements. And if they do that, they will restore the land to its rightful place and restore Amun-Sa's soul. But it's not going to be easy to do that.
The fifth adventure is Module S4 by Gary Gygax, The Lost Caverns of Saj Khan. And this was originally a tournament adventure that was played at conventions that was later then freshened up, given a glow up, and then released as an actual product. And it gave us the Archmage Igwilv, who now has a long and storied history, but didn't back then.
But now Tasha.
Yes, and also gave us Igwilv's daughter, Drelnza, who is sort of revealed in the course of this adventure.
And in updating this adventure, we have really played up this idea that this is where Tasha penned the Demonomicon, right? So there's weird planar stuff in here. There are demons in this cavern. There are magical traps. There is treasure to be won, and perhaps no treasure is greater than the daughter of Igwilv. Her more valuable to her than any of her gold or magic items she might have. At the center of this adventure, the very heart of the dungeon, you will meet the daughter of Igwilv, and she will have a few surprises of her own.
For Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, this is the sci-fi one. And you get a lot of sci-fi accoutrements.
Yes.
And certainly there are lasers in the DMG, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but if you like technology, a little bit of technology in your D&D, this is like the adventure to go to.
Yes, this is the chocolate in your peanut butter of your D&D game. You might not have intended for these two things to mix, and D&D in the past and in 5th edition has certainly had its share of science fantasy. This is not that. This is a clash of two genres that normally do not mix, but when they do, it is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. You will see all sorts of cool technologies. You will see technological antagonists like robots, combat robots, and worker robots, and androids. And the characters will get their hands on all sorts of technology. In addition to some technology that is, as you mentioned now in the Dungeon Master's Guide, like laser pistols and antimatter rifles, you're going to find interesting things in here like anti-gravity belts and new grenades, and maybe, if you're lucky or you have a very generous DM, you might get your hands on a suit of powered armor.
So we've got the 6 adventures.
Yes.
Why these?
All the way back in 2004, you'll see an article in, I believe, Dungeon Magazine called the 30 Greatest Adventures of All Time in D&D. Some of these come from that list, and others are less appreciated or perhaps unknown gems. I think a lot of fans will recognize the name Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Tales from the Yawning Portal ended with this epic fear dungeon, the Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah.
Quest from the Infinite Staircase leads to this kind of bizarre, infamous dungeon in its own right, which is a crashed spaceship.
Yeah.
So when choosing these adventures, one, we wanted all of them to kind of support this year-long celebration that D&D is going through. So we wanted to pick these wonderful adventures. The other thing is, these adventures aren't merely transcriptions of what you saw when they first debuted. In a lot of ways, you can think of them as translations of the material. So, for example, in the first adventure, The Lost City, if you go back and you read the original Lost City, there's a part in that adventure where you get to the end, and that dungeon had 100 rooms to it. But I think around 40 or 50 of them, it is just loose guidance. And they said to the DM, this is a time to learn how to DM. Here are some of the things that you can take and some general advice how to turn it into, like basically learn how to DM as part of a basic set. In this, we're taking that and we're kind of following through on its original aim, which is we've taken a bunch of unique rooms and we have just added a layer to that dungeon. That is, instead of saying to the DM, why don't you go and see what you can do? We say, hey, how do you feel about this presentation of the next layer of the ziggurat? So we've taken similar opportunities. Essentially, anywhere in adventure where it felt like something was supposed to be there, we have put that thing in there. If something wasn't clear, we made it clear. And then, of course, we did some general cultural knitting and removal of things that perhaps wouldn't have aged so well, so that the best parts of these adventures can truly shine.
We're getting it all. We're getting technology. We're getting monsters. We're getting lots of dungeons, lots of maps,
magic items,
and a return of some big evil stuff.
This book is really cool because if you look at the appendix of this book, you will find an elder evil stat block, an archfey stat block, a noble genie stat block, robots, androids, a legendary item, a fabled artifact that appears in one of the adventures, as well as one of the items can talk, which is always fun when you have a talking item.
The Infinite Staircase has been around in D&D for many years. It's one of the many ways that characters and creatures can get around in the multiverse if they don't, say, have teleport or plane shift or something like that at their disposal. Just like, the Well of Worlds can transport you to different places. The Infinite Staircase can as well. It is literally a sort of magical, mystical staircase that wends its way through the multiverse.
There is one character that you might meet along the staircase who you will see on the covers of this book, who is not the ruler or the creator of the staircase, but is pivotal to this book and the adventures that it contains. And that is the noble genie Nafas.
And who is Nafas?
And who is Nafas? That's a great, thank you for that question, Todd. I'm glad you asked that. So there is a saying in Persian fairy tales. Like in English fairy tales, you might begin with once upon a time. A Persian fairy tale will begin with Yeki Bud, Yeki Nabud, which loosely translates to once there was someone and once there was no one. Well, with the Infinite Staircase, once there was someone and once there was nothing but air. In the staircase, it's infinite doors and the planes that they lead to. Each time one of these doors is opened or air escapes into it, you get this planar wind that flows into the staircase and flows out of the staircase. Eventually, all of these doors at one point or another have opened, and in one ephemeral moment, this planar wind coalesced and created a noble genie that resides on the staircase. His name is Nafas, which means breath, and Nafas is the breath of the multiverse. He is a noble genie. If you all are familiar with noble genies, you will see them mentioned in the Monster Manual. But noble genies have a really awesome ability, and that is the ability to cast and grant wishes.
Yeah, what is the personality of someone who is the one who exists and on the staircase?
Yeah, so Nafas, he lives in this palace called the Censor of Dreams, and he has a unique ability that converges on his palace. And Nafas, because he's created through, all of these doors, all of these doorways to fantastic places, he can actually hear the spoken desires of creatures beyond each portal. So if you've ever, sat on your bed late at night and thought, man, I really wish that this would happen to me, or I wish I had done this differently. Every time you speak something like that, Nafas hears it in his sanctum. The problem is he can't leave the staircase because it is the thing that created him. Circumstance bars him from leaving it. So Nafas looks for people such as adventurers who he considers the living manifestations of a wish granted, and asks them to go out into the world, to go through the many doors of the staircase, to fulfill these things and to grant somebody else's wish. So he's really unique in that regard. He loves collecting stories. As you can imagine, someone that just constantly can hear things like this and extrapolates on them. If you come to his palace, he's a very friendly genie. Unlike perhaps more haughty or aristocratic noble genies you might find in other places, Nafas is not part of a noble bloodline. His title comes as a designation granted upon him by the plains himself. But he's a good guy. He's a funny guy. He loves a good cry. He loves a good laugh. And above all, he wants his guests to be comfortable and to hear their stories.